Good evening, everybody. What's going on? Welcome back to Shelfspace, the podcast that we started a few months ago. Man, we've been rolling on, and tonight we're gonna give you a short version. Okay. Only reason for that is because like life hits, everyone had to work tonight, so we didn't get a chance to be on with the full group as scheduled. But appreciate you tuning in and hello, Omaida, thank you. And literally, I actually got a message from someone that said, hey, when the shelf space coming on? So I appreciate that. I really do. All of us really do appreciate you watching and your comments throughout the week. So I'm just going to kind of give you a little bit of short version of the show tonight. We'll be back next week with everybody to discuss more topics and some of the topics that I'll mention tonight. Um, Before I get started, I'm going to do my normal introduction like everyone's here. I'm your host. I go by the name of Almond Brown here on the podcast. You can call me AB. You can call me Al. I just landed the spaceship outside in the driveway and came into the podcast setup. And again, like I said, it's just me tonight. Usually, my co-hosts are here with me, Headache Mitchell and Wild Wild West, and then we also have our first female co-host, Connie. She was unavailable tonight, so but we're going to continue on with the purpose of the show, and we really brought this show together because we wanted to give people just a place to go or come to where we could talk about different things. We could focus on mental health awareness. We can focus on self improvement, but do it in a fun way. Talk about a lot of good topics that we see in the news, things that are, we can give different perspectives on, thought provoking. We don't really, really get into politics much, but we have talked, politics in the past and may do it again in the future. I like to always have both sides represented. So we're not here to influence anybody in either way. We're just here to really have discussions. But it's all really geared around mental health, um, self improvement. And this month, September, is Suicide Prevention Month. And so I just want to bring that to everyone's attention. There is a hotline number that works across the country, 988 suicide prevention. Um, if you know of somebody that may need help, or if you yourself may need help, don't feel ashamed about reaching out to someone. We'd like to encourage you to, use your local resources, find someone to talk to. It always really starts with a conversation, and that's really what shelf space is about. So some of the things that you can look for, since this is Suicide Prevention Month, if you've been talking to someone and you're concerned about them, there are little, things you may pick up from them, things you may hear them saying that may be indications of someone is so falling into a depression or maybe having those thoughts of hurting themselves or a suicide. So and again, this is National Suicide Prevention Month, and some of the warning signs that the CDC has put out. When you hear people say things like "people would be better off without me," "I can't take it anymore," "you won't have to worry about me," just some of those real self-defeating comments, phrases that you may hear them say more than once. I think maybe we've all at certain times said, "I can't take it anymore," but you kind of know when someone is kind of going into that dark place or spiraling into that dark place. So you want to make sure that you're aware of your resources. 988 is a good number to call. Engage with them and always let them know that they're not alone. And that's really the purpose of the 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 driving purpose of why we put shelf space together. Now, if you tuned in, we've had a lot of great conversations about everything from um, police conduct, over policing. We've discussed relationships. We've discussed sports. We've discussed music. We like to have a lot of fun here on the show. I don't like to be alone with just me talking to the screen. So if you've got any comments or any suggestions for upcoming shows, drop them in. Drop them in the chat section. If you would like to be part of the show, please add that also. So we love the participation, and we've had um, that growing participation. As we've done more shows, people chiming in, people wanting to be, you know, guests on the show. So we enjoy that. So this week, again, I said it's going to be a short show, so I'm just going to go into some of what I've been doing this week. One of the big things is NFL started this week, and I think everyone is, was a lot of people were waiting for that to come around. See what your team was going to do. It's been only 1 week, but the burning question for a lot of us is, will the Falcons ever recover from that Super Bowl loss? And I watched the game Sunday. Been a Falcons fan for a long time, but I've had to like really just lay them to the side and move on, because it was just that atmosphere of mediocrity. I think it kind of set in. But they had the game won. They let their arch rival, the Saints, steal it back from them with Jameis Winston as quarterback, which I honestly, I had good things to say about Jameis Winston when he left Tampa. I didn't think he was a bad quarterback, and he's done this to the Falcons before. A lot of people have just kind of bashed him, and in different chat groups. I've even brought up the idea of like the Falcons should have gone out and got Jameis just even as a backup, when they still had Matt Ryan. But don't sleep on Jameis. Jameis has winning attitude in him. He's had some struggles, but other than that, the Falcons defense looked good, so there's some hope there for you Falcons fans. And it just looks like the good teams are still good. The Bucks, the Chiefs, the Bills still look like they're going to be dominant. I know it's just 1 week, but they looked really good Sunday. The Bills played Thursday. The Vikings actually look good with Dalvin Cook and Jefferson. They're going to be trouble. And I'm going to tell you this. You're going to hear it here first on Shelf Space. Keep your eye on the NFC East. Every team except Dallas. The Commanders, the Eagles, and the Giants all were pretty impressive offensively Sunday. So there may be something good working there. So we will, next week I'll engage my host to see which teams they're following, and we may talk a little more NFL as we go on. Another story in the sports world. Um, NBA fans, if you know the owner of the Phoenix Suns, Robert Sarver, he has been suspended for a year. Now, this investigation started before the end of last season, and it kind of died down in the news. But there was an investigation being done by the NBA that there were accusations of his mistreatment of employees, players, staff, whatever it may be. So looks like a ruling came down today that they're going to suspend him for a year. We'll touch on that next week too, because obviously there's something in that investigation that came up that was very troubling for the NBA. So we'll touch on that. And the other big event in the news was the passing of the Queen. Now, I am not somebody who follows the royal family. I know some people that do, and kind of keep up with that story. And there's been, when I ask, well, what's the interest, what draws you to that? And it's sort of a lot of times it's females, and it's them saying that the fairy tale story, being an actual princess, it's just something that fascinates them, and they follow that. And you don't really see that there really isn't any other monarchy in place like that, anywhere in the world. So you get to kind of see that piece of history from back then. And Midas comment is Harry and Meghan showed up, and it surprised everyone. I don't keep up with the drama between that family, but apparently there was some drama when Harry decided to marry Meghan, who was, I guess, a commoner. I don't know what they would say about that, but so there was just some drama in that, and he gave up his crown. Mighty, may want to correct me on that, but he stepped away from any connection with the family, and but you know, funerals have the tendency to bring families together. I think we probably all experienced that. And it's sort of it's a sad occasion, um, but it does happen to bring families together. So we were going to talk about the passing of the Queen and the historical context of that. I mean, just something we've never seen in all my life. The Queen Elizabeth, she's been, that's who it's been. Not a lot has changed. I mean, I think some of us may remember Diana passing away, and how big a story that was. Of course, she had left the family. The divorce had happened, and she was seeing someone else. But she was somebody who was well liked by the everyone in the country, and around the world. I mean, she was really well liked, and I remember her wedding being on TV and all of that. Um, and ironically, Mother Teresa died that same week, or was buried that same week that Diana was. That's why I remember those two events. Um, and so uh, this happening now, probably the next biggest thing that has happened in the news for that royal family, other than the weddings, is the passing of the Queen. And conversations started happening um, around the country, on news shows and all, about just the legacy of the English monarchy. If you guys Google Ali Velshi, who's a reporter on MSNBC, he had a very raw interview with a British historian this past weekend, where in his monologue, he had made some comments about colonialism and some of the negative effects of it and what it had done to countries around the world. And not in a really disparaging way, but it was really, he just laid out some facts. But the British historian who was on with him really took issue with that, and there was a really tense back and forth with them, and Ali Velshi had cut him off and asked him, why was he upset about him bringing up things that are true. Ali Velshi, who was born in Kenya, and and Kenya is one of the countries that is part of that recognizes that UK monarchy. So I would assume he would know. I mean, he lived there, so he was born there. His family's from there, so it was a really good interview. Um, and some could argue that that might not have been the time to bring it up. They're still mourning her, but I thought he did it in a respectful way. But that conversation needs to be had um, with everyone who loves history and wants to really have that discussion of how the English monarchy shaped the other parts of the world, its ties to Africa, some other countries in that region, its ties to us, how colonialism really shaped those governments, and what the effects of it were on it. I think a lot of people came to love Queen Elizabeth because she, in my comments to in our production meeting this week, in my comments, I thought she did a good job of sort of finding a good way to usher in the monarchy into a more modern age, where she did keep up with modern events. She wasn't very political, but she also was very open to having all types of visitors come to the castle and be sort of engaged with people, um, that are that are part of pop culture. So sort of modernizing the monarchy. So we'll talk about that next week, and I definitely, if you guys want to drop your comments in and be involved in the conversation next week about that. I really want to get down to colonialism and my argument that I have with Headache a lot of times when we talk about race, and he talks about things like, what does it mean to be black, and we talk about race and racism. And my conversation with him is that racism, my theory, and I'm just going to say it's a theory, but I'm going to share some books with you, some readings with you. But racism didn't exist in the what I would call the ancient world. It is actually not a phenomenon. It's actually an idea, a model that was shaped during more late medieval times. That's where racism came about. So what I am saying is, like, people didn't walk around saying you're black, you're white, you can't do this. It wasn't used in a negative way, like we have seen it, in these modern times. So we're going to talk about that next week. And then moving on to what we're watching. A lot of people don't watch Emmy award shows, but the Emmys were on yesterday, and was it yesterday or was it Sunday? It was Sunday. And there were some just notable wins, and if you've looked at any headlines, you can see that Cheryl Lee Ralph, and she won her first Emmy. And a lot of us already know who Cheryl Lee Ralph is. I mean, she's been around for a long time. Her face is very recognizable. Some of you may not know of all the things that she's been a part of, but her face is very recognizable. Her dimples, are signature. But Cheryl Lee Ralph has been around a long time. I was just doing some reading on her, trying to remember where I first remember her from. And if you guys remember the Dreamgirls, the original Broadway, what was the Broadway play, the Dreamgirls, from back like early '80s. That's She was a part of that. So um, she's been around a long time, and for her to finally win her first Emmy was a huge moment. It was, if you can also watch her acceptance speech, and she breaks out into song. Is really significant, and just talks about, you know, not giving up on her dream or believing that it wasn't going to happen. So a lot of people were really, really happy for her, including, even those who probably didn't watch Abbott Elementary. I haven't watched it. I know Ron Wawa West, who's part of the show, he has mentioned Abbott Elementary a lot of times as being a really good show, and something that we should tune in to watch. And so, why not now? After that Emmy win from Cheryl Lee Ralph, go ahead and check out her work. So awesome that. But what was surprising was she was the second black woman to win an Emmy for what was it? Best Supporting Actress, I believe. I should have known that before getting into it, but um, she was only the second black woman to win that. So it was like, who was the first? And surprisingly, it was Jack A. Harry. Y'all remember Jack A. from 227, and that's what she won it for. She actually won it for 227, which was surprising to me. I mean, 227 was a good show, and I think Jackie was she really did steal the show on that. She was Mary's neighbor, but became like a well loved regular character on there. So, um, that was kind of interesting to know, of all the great shows that have been on TV, that it wasn't that, not that Jack Hay was bad. It was just surprising to hear that that was the first, or that was the second win. And then if you've watched Euphoria, Zendaya won for that, which is a really sort of dark show, but that good on the topic of substance abuse. Very, very intriguing show. And then Squid Games. Um, First time that, again, that an actor of Asian descent had won for an Emmy for that. So a lot of groundbreaking things happening with the Emmys. Again, I don't watch I don't watch award shows, but if you're looking for something fun to watch, something cool to watch, sometimes the Emmys can kind of lead you in a good direction. White Lotus did win, and I've watched White Lotus before. I actually watched that. White Lotus was a very good show, and Connie Britton won. No, I'm sorry, not Connie Britton. Jennifer Coolidge won for her character Tanya McQuoid. She's a troubled mother recently, troubled woman whose mother recently died. She seeks inner peace. Everything happens at this hotel, and all the characters sort of interact with each other, but they got their own storylines going on. It's extremely funny, but there are some really significant moments in there. One for Jennifer Coolidge's character, who's she's taken her mother's ashes with her to the hotel, to the resort. She's there by herself, and she's just had goes through her moments of grief and her moments of reconciling with the fact that her mother's passed in her own life, and she meets someone there who's sort of like a counselor that she's talking to. So if you get a chance, watch that, because the great writing on the show, but it's actually great writing, but really funny comedy. So definitely watch that. So we'll be talking a little bit more about what we're watching next week when the rest of the group is back. Also, what we're reading, and then on to that segment of what I'm reading. Been reading a book called The Code of the Extraordinary Mind, and I'm gonna pull up the author's name real quick just so that I can share that with you guys. Um, so yes, call Code of the Extraordinary Mind by Vishen Lakhani. And in that book, this is kind of leads into our mental health segment of the show. But in that book, he talks about, um, and then I break it up into like four sections, and he talks about transcending the culture escape, and what he calls it. And that culture escape is, these rules. We got these rules that are set up for your culture that tell you, hey, this is how you're supposed to act. This is how you're supposed to talk. This is what you're supposed to like. This is what you're supposed to not like. Those types of rules that are set in from wherever they may have come from, years ago, traditions, things like that. And he talks about how those things hold us back, how those things can actually keep us from reaching our goals or becoming the most, the best version of ourselves that we can be. And for example, like he's a Hindu culture, and he talks about wanting to eat beef. So they don't eat beef, but he saw these great commercials about you know McDonald's hamburgers, and he said to him it looked so delicious, and he wanted to try it, and so he would ask his mom, well, why don't we eat beef? And she would explain to him, and then he would again follow up with why, because the reasons were, well, those seem to be some old traditions, and those things don't aren't relative to today. And he kept pushing his mom, well, why, why, and she said, well, you know what, she allowed him to have a hamburger, and he said it actually wasn't as good as he thought it was going to be, but the point was that he kept pushing against the those culture escapes, the things he calls rules. And we'll get into that next week, because he says when you step outside of that perceived world, you can start to recognize things that are relative truths and things that are absolute truths. And relative truths are things that they may not be true for everybody, and absolute truths are things that they're going to be true for everybody. But a lot of times we are shaping our world, our thoughts, our actions, our reactions to things are being shaped by relative truths. And that this book helps you really get out of that mode, that mindset, try to break free of that. So we're going to be talking about that next week. So that's really, kind of give you a preview of what we're going to be talking about. The Toxic Avenger will be back, and we're going to also kind of dig into a little bit of what we want to call letting go. So we've talked about moving on to, new relationships, but still dragging that baggage, that ex, that the holding on to that old connection sometimes, and dragging that into a new relationship. And what are the pitfalls of that? What are the things that can really are we're setting ourselves up for failure, in a new relationship when we do that. So we're gonna address that also. And so check us out next week. Again, I was going to say, I was going to make this show really short. I appreciate everybody watching. I definitely, we go back and we read all the comments, and we'll again, be ready for you guys next week. So I'm going to see. I'm gonna sign off here in a little bit, but I just wanted to make sure that we again encourage you to anyone who's listening, encourage you to get help. Again, Suicide Prevention Month, all of September. I want to make everybody aware of the number, the hotline number that you can call, 988, if you need help, or if you know someone that needs help. Get involved with that. Some of the again, we mentioned like some of the signs, things that may kind of tip you off if someone is going into that dark place. You just listen to them talk. They're saying things like, "I can't take it anymore." If they're saying things like, "The world would be better off without me," and some of those obvious things that you hear, but sometimes they're not so obvious. Sometimes they're subtle. Sometimes they become more withdrawn. They don't. They're less engaged with you. You ask them to go out, they don't want to go. They like to be alone. They're not answering calls. Those types of things. We don't want to let our friends and family slip into that dark place. And it's been kind of easy to do since the shutdown and the pandemic and all of that. And people have kind of isolated themselves. And even though, they may not be thinking of suicide, they may still be feeling that depression. A lot of times when you are feeling that, when you start feeling depressed, the easiest thing to do is to isolate yourself. You don't want to be around people. You don't want to have to answer those questions. You don't want to have to look them in the face and let somebody, detect that maybe something is going on. And so that's why a lot of times your circle, those that are around you, um, need to reach out. If you feel like, you know, there's someone in your life that just if that feeling comes across you, just reach out. I mean, we've all done this. Either we've done it or it's been done to us several times. Thinking about somebody, and you just pick up the phone and you call them or you text them or whatever, you just reach out to them, and you didn't realize what it did, but they said to you, "I'm so glad you called. I was just thinking of this, or I was having some problems with this." Maybe that's why they came across your mind, or you yourself going through something, and you're really struggling with a decision or struggling with a situation in your life, and all of a sudden you get a phone call with somebody that you haven't spoken to in a while, and they just pick you up. They just lift you up. We need more of that. So it's really hard, really easy to fall into sort of a dark, angry place with everything that's going on. I have to sometimes turn the news off because I like to watch the news, like to keep up with events, but sometimes you got to turn it off and disconnect. So I want to encourage everyone this month, since it is Suicide Prevention Month, reach out to a friend, schedule a lunch, schedule a dinner, schedule some time to go and just talk and hang out with them. No expectations, no, hey, I need you to do something for me. Just go, schedule some time with them, ask them what's going on, how's life, what's been up, catch up with them. It is hard to do because we're all busy. We all get wrapped up in our schedules, especially with work. But it is important. I posted earlier this week. a quote by Jim Rome, something that I like to remember and keep thinking about. He says, if you work hard on your job, you'll make a living. If you work hard on yourself, you'll make a fortune. And that can really kind of bring things into perspective, that we give our jobs a lot of time. We have to, we know that, because that's how we make our living. But we need to be just as passionate about working on ourselves, um, doing things for ourselves, self help, self health, mental awareness, and then sharing that with each other. So a lot of the things that we're going through, that get us down or get us caught up in these really dark feelings, can be alleviated or can be handled better if we just share it with somebody. I had a couple weeks ago, I had a lunch. It was actually our early dinner with a good friend that I know is going through a really rough time. And me and another, we all three of us got together. We all used to work together, and all I wanted to do was just sit and talk and just the person had been going through some things. They had shared some things on social media, and just like, look, I just want to talk. Just, you can be angry, you can be, you know, upset, um, and you know, whatever it may be, but let it out here. Don't do anything to yourself. Um, you know, Keep a smile on your face, and you'll get through it. And so, just sometimes people need to hear that. I've been in situations before where I needed to hear that. So, um, side chick to queen, never stop dreaming. There you go. There you go. Look, you know what I'm saying. Look up. Set higher goals. That always works. So, um, I, thanks for that. Thanks for that. So yeah, set higher goals, and just you can have the conversation with friends and people who may be in a little stronger state than you, but you'll find when sharing those things that it's not it's not maybe your situation is not to the point where you feel like you need to where you're not thinking of suicide. Not only that, I just don't want to go straight to like suicide. Or people also, they may not commit suicide, but they constantly live in sort of a dark, depressed state, and that wears on you over time. And that wears on people around you over time, and that can sometimes drive people away. And so you want to help your friends. You want to reach out to your friends who you may see or slipping into that, so that you can help lift them up. And I promise you, you do things like that, it comes back to you. We're all going to need it. I'm sitting on this microphone as Almond Brown, telling you, giving you advice here, what you should do. But this is advice that, I've had to use for myself, share it with other people. And, it's all of us are going to have to really, um, work to strengthen each other. So, that's really what we want to do on Shelf Space. We want to do it in a fun way. So with that, again, I'm by myself tonight, so I'm not just going to sit here and talk for 2 hours. So hopefully I get to see you guys next week. I am going to crank up the spaceship and stop by. Let me see, it's 8:50. May stop by Dunkin' Donuts if I can get me something before I head back to my planet. And I hope to see you guys next week. I'm going to sign off. I'm your host, Almond Brown. This is Shelf Space, the podcast. Short version this week because it's just me, but we'll be back next week, long and strong. So I want to say good night to everybody and thank you for tuning in. Thank you.
Please record your message.